But to give you a bit of a rule of thumb, I guess in a rough time frame, you're looking at about 3 months, if you've got a title block of land. And that's the other bit, if you've got a title block of land. So if you don't have a title block of land and that's not titling for a year, you're probably really allowing a year plus 2 to 3 months, right? So be mindful of that. And then you want to allow roughly 6 months to build a single story. And I think that's a good amount of time. Some will be a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, but around about 6 months. And on a double story, sort of 8 to 9 months. On a double story, say up to about 40 squares. And if you're over 40 squares, you might be allowing a little bit longer, maybe 10 to 12 months in that sort of time frame. So if you add the pre-site and the on-site bits together, so you paid a deposit to getting the keys to your home, you want to allow somewhere 9 to 12 months for a single, and you want to allow somewhere about 12 to 15 months for a double story home. And I think that's a pretty good guide to where that sits right now, Colin. And again, that'll be builder dependent, but that's roughly the number you probably want to be thinking about when you walk in the front door of a display home or you first make an inquiry with a builder. So any thoughts on that, mate? How do you see that? I mean, that'd be pretty much in time with what you guys deliver.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. We generally say 6 months for the build. Thankfully, as you said, the industry's now back on track with timing. So our builds and the industry's builds, for the most part, they're within single stories within 6 months. Some will do 4 if it's a little house. Some will do 7 or 8. But it's not like you're waiting, like what we were not that long ago. So a full 12 months has gone by, and a full cycle of sales and completed builds from those sales has now happened. And when we're not just saying it might take, it actually is now. The proof is in the pudding. We've seen those builds being completed in a much more manageable, realistic time frame, which is a great thing to report back on, Daz. So I want to highlight one thing that I think people miss is Darren's timeframes he's talking about is from contract signed. Okay, so contract signed to a permit issued and a site start is about 3 months. Yes, you can get it in 2 months, maybe, if it's jetting through the system. But you would have to have your finance in order, and the builder would have to get the property info ordered real quick, and blah, blah, blah. A lot of boxes need to be ticked really quickly. It's achievable, but you may as well just allow contract signed 3 months to a permit on average, right? And then add your 6 months for the single story build. That's where we get the 9 months from. That's probably a really good allowance to put in. So I'll repeat, it's contract signed. A lot of people pay a deposit many weeks or even months before that contract is signed because they wanted to lock in a promotion, and then, all that sort of stuff, or the land fell through, they've got to get another block, or their finance, hasn't got a pre-approval, so they've got to wait for this or that, or they're just, as a client, you're being indecisive. You're changing the plan, you're changing what's included, you're changing the quote back and forth, you're comparing with other ones. Like, the reason it takes whatever time it takes to get to contract is usually not necessarily the builder. They'll do the drawings, they'll do the colors, they'll do the contract. Sometimes it's quite often the client that does delay that a bit through indecision, and that's not wrong, it's just reality. So yeah, from contract signed, make sure you understand that part. I think it's really important to note, Darren, whilst we say these generic or general timeframes, your contract's going to have longer than that in